Hello, welcome to Astronautics for Exploit. I am Dr. Ayanshola Ogundele, and I will be presenting the future perspective of the space tourism. The overview of my presentation is as follows: the birth of space tourism, Ansari X Prize, and the future of space tourism. Today, space is opening up for suborbital, orbital, and lunar space tourism. The private space companies such as SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, and Blue Origin are at forefront for the provision of space tourism, human space travel for recreational purposes. They are investing on the development of spaceports for easy space transportation, suborbital, orbital, and lunar space tourism vehicles. Innovative ideas such as space system reusability and disruptive technologies. A future multi-billion-dollar space tourism market is erupting, and this is due to high investment by the private space industries in space tourism. Between 2001 and 2009, about 7 space tourists participated in the orbital space tourism activities to the International Space Station, paying between $20 million and $25 million for each trip by each space tourist. The tourists perform various research activities while in Earth orbit. In 2004, the Scaled Composite Company, the first private company to reach and surpass an altitude of 100 kilometers, an altitude beyond the Kármán line, the arbitrarily defined boundary of space, twice within 2 weeks, won the $10 million X Prize. A new era of space tourism was ushered in as a result of Richard Branson of Virgin Galactic suborbital flight of July 11, 2021, Jeff Bezos suborbital flight of July 20, 2021, SpaceX Inspirational 4 orbital space tourism of September 16, 2021, which was the first all-civilian crew to fly an orbital space mission, and Gisaku Meizawa 12-day orbital space tourism to the International Space Station on December 8, 2021, in preparation for his planned trip around the moon with SpaceX in 2023. The planned future space tourism includes Yusaku Meizawa moon loop flight, named Dear Moon Project, a lunar tourism mission, and Earth project, using a free return trajectory trip to be offered by SpaceX. SpaceX plans to colonize Mars and Space Adventures circumlunar mission to the moon with the price per passenger around $100 million. The birth of space tourism. Space tourism, the practice of traveling into space for recreational, leisure, or business purposes, is gaining momentum day by day. This picture shows Blue Origin's New Shepard suborbital vehicle. Dennis Tito, a crew member of International Space Station EP-1, who paid about $20 million for a trip to AeroSpace, was the world's first space tourist, who personally funded his trip into space. On April 28, 2001, on a visiting mission to the International Space Station, he spent about 7 days, 22 hours, 4 minutes in space, and orbited the Earth 128 times. This picture shows Dennis Tito in International Space Station. Other space tourists. After Dennis Tito's flight, other space tourists, such as Mark Soderwood, Gregory Olsen, Marcos Pontes, Anoze Ansari, and a host of others travel to the International Space Station as space tourists. Interest in space tourism. Presently, space tourism is gaining more prominence, and interest from the space enthusiasts and tourists. Various suborbital and orbital tourism opportunities are now available. This picture shows Ansari owning a plant grown in the service module of the International Space Station. Ansari X Prize. The Ansari X Prize was a space competition in which the X Prize Foundation offered a $10 million prize for the first non-government organization to launch a reusable crew spacecraft into space twice within 2 weeks. Ansari X Prize model. It was modeled after early 28th century aviation prizes and aimed to encourage development of low-cost spaceflight. This picture shows Spaceship One, the world's reusable commercial spacecraft. Competition goal of Ansari X Prize. Demonstration of a private vehicle capable of flying a pilot to the edge of space defined as 100 kilometers altitude to encourage private sector participation in the space industry. It aimed to demonstrate that spaceflight can be affordable and accessible to corporations and civilians. It opened the door for innovation, commercial spaceflight, and space tourism. This picture shows the winning spaceplane Spaceship One and White Knight. Tier 1 project. Experimental spaceplane. Tier 1 project designed by Burt Rutan and financed by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen using the experimental spaceplane Spaceship won $10 million Ansari X Prize on October 4, 2004. This picture shows Spaceship One, which won the $10 million Ansari X Prize. The future of space tourism. This picture shows the time range, the estimated time for the future of space tourism. Commercial missions to low Earth orbit, 2021 to 2027, is being proposed that the commercial missions to low Earth orbit will have been established. Also, orbital and suborbital space tourism, 2021 to 2031 and beyond. High altitude balloon space tourism, lunar space tourism, commercial space stations, lunar service, Mathian. These space future space tourism missions from 2035 and beyond. Commercial missions to low Earth orbit. Commercial use of space is the provision of space goods or services of commercial value by using equipment sent into Earth orbit or AeroSpace. Private space companies. In order to provide space services, a private sector entity puts its own capital and at risk and provides goods or services primarily to other space sector entities or consumers rather than to the government. This picture shows illustration of Bigelow Aerospace Commercial Space Station. LEO commercial missions till 2021. The list here shows commercial missions until the year 2021. Space Adventure's first space tourist space flight to the International Space Station. SpaceX Inspirational 4 civilian first orbital mission. Russian film crew space flight to the International Space Station and Yuzoku Maezawa space flight to the International Space Station. This picture shows International Space Station. LEO commercial missions beyond 2021. Some of them are Asean Space's first private astronaut crew mission to the International Space Station, SpaceX's first orbital Starship test flight launch to space, Boeing Starliner's first crew test flight, Sierra Nevada Corporation's Dream Chaser spacecraft mission to the ISS. This picture shows SpaceX Starship spacecraft. Orbital and suborbital space tourism 2021 to 2031 and beyond. Orbital space tourism is a tourism which employs orbital spaceflight, a spaceflight in which a spacecraft is placed on a trajectory where it could remain in space for at least one orbit. Boundary of space. To achieve orbital flight around the Earth, the spacecraft must be on a free trajectory, which has an altitude at perigee around 80 kilometers, the boundary of space. This picture shows Boeing Starliner spacecraft. Suborbital space tourism. A suborbital tourism is a tourism which makes use of a suborbital spaceflight, a spaceflight in which the spacecraft reaches outer space, but its trajectory intersects the atmosphere or surface of the gravitating body from which it was launched, so that it will not complete one orbital revolution. It does not become an artificial satellite or reach escape velocity. This picture shows Virgin Galactic Spaceship 2 suborbital spacecraft. Orbital and suborbital space tourism missions till 2021. Some of these missions are SpaceX launch of all civilian space tourism, Virgin Galactic launch of Richard Branson, Blue Origin launch of Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin launch of William Shatner and Michael Strahan. This picture shows launching of Blue Origin New Shepard spacecraft. Orbital and suborbital space tourism beyond 2021. Some of them are SpaceX launch of Asean 1 mission, Blue Origin suborbital future mission plan, Virgin Galactic suborbital future mission plan. This picture shows illustration of SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft. High altitude balloon space tourism 2025 to 2031 and beyond. High altitude balloons are crewed or uncrewed balloons, usually filled with helium or hydrogen, that are released into the stratosphere. There are different types of high altitude balloons. The most common type are weather balloons, balloons as a platform for experiments in the upper atmosphere. Modern balloons contain electronic equipment such as radio transmitters, cameras, or satellite navigation systems. This picture shows high altitude airship. High altitude balloon missions before 2021. In France, during 1783, the first public experiment with balloon named Challenger by Jacques Charles and Robert Brothers took place. Crewed high-altitude balloons have been used since the 1930s for research and is seeking flight altitude records. This picture shows Joseph Kittinger stepping out from the balloon-supported Excelsior Gondola on August 16, 1966, at an altitude of 31.3 kilometers. High-altitude balloon missions beyond 2021. Geostationary balloon satellites proposed high-altitude balloons that will float in the mid-stratosphere at about 18 to 21 kilometers above sea level at a fixed point over the Earth's surface and thereby act as atmosphere analogs to satellites. A GPS could be used to provide broadband internet access over a large area. Space perspective, Cesarto space balloon, 0 to infinity, have future plans for high-altitude balloon tourism. This picture shows geostationary balloon satellites. Cislunar space tourism 2029 to 2035 and beyond. Cislunar space is the region of space that lies between the Earth and the Moon, or the Moon's orbit. It is a space from the Earth out to and including the region around the surface of the Moon. Cislunar space includes LEO, medium Earth orbit, geostationary Earth orbit, as well as other orbits, such as low lunar orbit, the intended orbit for the gateway. This picture shows cislunar space, illustration of an Earth-Moon transportation network, a key architectural element for access throughout cislunar space. This picture shows cislunar space from and the region in between the Earth and the Moon. The orbit's low Earth orbit, geosynchronous Earth orbit. Cislunar space tourism, future space missions. Tourism beyond Earth orbit. SpaceX Their Moon project. Moon loop flight using a free return trajectory for space tourist Yusaku Maezawa. Space Adventures circumlunar mission to the Moon. This picture shows Starship passing the Moon. Commercial space stations. The space station serves as a home where crews of astronauts and cosmonauts live. Space infrastructure. Some private space companies are presently developing commercial space stations as commercial laboratory. Residential infrastructure. Hotel tourism centers in space that will serve as a home to microgravity experiments. This picture shows illustration of Asean space module orbiting Earth. Commercial Space Station 2025 and beyond. The Bigelow Next Generation Commercial Space Station, a private orbital space station under conceptual development by Bigelow AeroSpace. Asean Space Station, the world's first commercial space station, is planned for launch in the future. Nanoracks Starlab Space Station, also planned for launch in 2027. This picture shows Nanoracks Starlab commercial space station concept. Northrop Grumman commercial free-flying space station future launch, which will initially take a crew of 4, later expandable to 8, and will operate for around 15 years. Blue Origin Orbital Reef Space Station, which can be leased for plant biology experiments, space tourism ventures, is planned to be launched by the later part of the 2020s. This picture shows the Northrop Grumman free-flying commercial space station concept. Deep space future space tourism missions. Lunar Service, Mathan, Deep Space Future. Deep space exploration is the branch of astronomy, astronautics, and space technology that is involved with exploring the distant regions of outer space. These space missions onto the lunar surface, Mars, and other places in space are planned for the future. This picture shows illustration of deep space. You've been watching and listening to the future perspective of the space tourism. Thank you.